There are so many species and so many different forms of variations of Sonichu that one might be a little bit confused as to why on earth the Rosechu species technically would be any other different from the male counterparts. With that being said, however, the Rosechu species involved in Sonichu is quite unlike the Sonichus because for some reason it displays an even more blatant scarce tactics when it comes to the identification of gender and specifically Chris's relationship towards gender specific roles and, well, the reproductive cycle. But with that being said, the Rosechu species. Rosechu is the name used for the predominantly female gendered specimen of Chris's imaginary species of electric hedgehog Pokemon, who are not necessarily electric, nor are they truly hedgehogs or Pokemon by the conventional definition, mostly because they're just Sonic the Hedgehog recolors, while Rosechu is literally just Amy Rose, except painted slightly more of a hot pink definition, if you will, or whatever Chris had access to at the time. Appearance. Rosechus, much like their mostly male counterparts, resemble certain video game hedgehogs in general appearance, with the females of the both species having longer and softer head spines that superficially resemble human hair from a distance. The only distinguishing attribute is a slender and elongated tail with a very sharp tip. Even so, not all Rosechus have this type of tail, some lacking one altogether. This could mean that they're not born a female Raichu, which was further confirmed when Rosechu came out as a transgender woman. Like Sonichus, they come in many recolors, but a typical Rosechu has pink fur, like its larval form. There may also be some other distinguishing characteristics such as wings, tails, or drill hands, but generally the only things distinguishing one Rosechu from another are fur color and clothing choices. Whereas Sonichus can fully retract their eyelids, most Rosechus always have their top eyelids slightly lowered, lending to the impression of a vacant look. Certain Rosechus spot a visible navel. This is peculiar as navels are present only among placental mammals, which electric hedgehog Pokemon are definitely not on account of them laying eggs. Navels are not universally among Rosechus, while Rosechu, Lolisa, Simola, and Serpina are seen having navels when their bellies are exposed. The same does not apply for Angelica and Bubbles. Whether or not this is just because Chris forgot, then we don't know. Behavior. They are all the same. Moving on. Sadly, yeah, that's I wish I could say that that wasn't true somehow, but unfortunately, yeah, in terms of personality, they are all completely interchangeable. Rosechus and reproduction. Chris has loosely based the anatomy of the Sonichu and Rosechu's reproductive organs on those of humans and dogs. A Rosechu's vagina is normally hidden from view by a flap of skin which recedes during urination, sexual arousal, or a psych-up attack. Rosechu's nipples appear only when aroused, for sensual massage. This implies that a Rosechu must be sexually aroused to feed her own young. I feel like I need to have a shower after reading that. Ew. Rosechus possesses a V-shaped pouch behind their vaginal opening. Do we really need to know that much, do we? Anyway, apparently this serves the same function as a uterus. Hooray, I guess. I don't know. First time sex may be painful for Rosechus, even causing them to bleed from their hymen, but it soon begins to feel like a sensual massage. To who, Chris? Who does it feel like a sensual massage to? After which the Rosechu lays an egg outside of her body and must be kept warm until the infant Sonny or Rosie hatches. This indicates that Rosechus are some kind of monotreme, despite the fact that mice and hedgehogs, upon which Pikachu/Raichu are based, are placentals. However, their biology is inconsistent, as the original Rosechu is depicted menstruating in Sonichu issue 10, a function found only in primates. Also, egg-laying mammals lack nipples and nurse their young by sweating milk from their pores of their skin. These may be down to a unique quirk in the reproductive system of Rosechus, though it is also all the more likely that Chris would ever put this level of thought into anything. I probably. I'm going to say this is probably more. This seems like the sort of thing that, it seems more like POW comics influence levels of degeneracy, but no, actually, I'm going to stick with that. I think Chris just took this from several issues of something done by POW comics. Chris has mentioned that a Sonny is born as the result of intercourse between the Sonichu and a Rosechu, or some combination of the above and a Ditto Pokemon. It is never explained, for instance, how a Rosechu and a Ditto would copulate, but presumably the Ditto would mimic a Sonichu. The gestation time of a Rosechu pregnancy is unknown, thank God for that. However, Sonichu and Rosechu's two eldest offspring, Sarah and Christine, were born on the 29th and 6th of October 2006, respectively. Robbie, the couple's third hypothetical child, was born on the 26th of February of 2007. Given that there are 99 days between the first two dates and 143 between the later two, any of the several things can be hypothesized. The gestation time of a Sonichu is about 3 months, and Sonichu and Rosechu wasted no time getting back on the saddle after their first child. The gestation time is closer to 4 months, and Christine was a premature birth. They are eggs that gestate outside of the body, meaning that they can have been laid there any number of months before their birthdays, with the additional implication that Sonichu and Rosechu had a shotgun wedding if the gestation period is longer than 3 months. Or Chris paid no mind to the idea of time when selecting birth dates of his characters, and never noticed the logical impossibility of the Sonny's birthdays because he is an idiot. All things considered, the last option seems the most plausible. The only IRL animal that can possibly gestate shorter than a Rosechu is a kangaroo, with a period of a single month. However, given that Chris has no knowledge of reproductive systems outside of humans, and this is effed up of the hybrids, the last option is still the most plausible. If you think you know why this is the case, please let your thoughts be known down below, and your thoughts will certainly be explained, or heard, or just read. It depends who's reading them, I guess. Rosechus and evolution. Chris seems to hold a rather strange view of evolution. It is largely based on Pokemon. When hatched from their eggs, Rosechus are born as a Rosie. This infant Pokemon can already have a certain subtype. Angelica, for instance, was born as a white Rosie with a flying subtype. After being nurtured for some time, the Rosie then tends to evolve into their Rosechu form. The path of evolution beyond Rosechu is unclear, although when the Rosechu is brought in contact with a moonstone, the creature can evolve into a Vamprosa. It's worth noting that, like their male counterparts, no evolution of Rosechu occurs due to straightforward leveling. All require a held item or evolutionary item, and most some level of happiness. Garden variety Rosechus have the simplest path and just need to be happy when they level. When Chris finally created a Wikipedia article for Rosechu, he included an extensive and confusing evolutionary path for Rosechus as a species. Curiously, while most of the Rosechus shown in the comic have some kind of subtype from birth, Chris's ramblings imply that all Rosies start without a type, and only acquire one through external sources such as being exposed to a moonstone or the other BS that can force a Pokemon to evolve in the Pokemon franchise. Like, what was that one where apparently Gligar needed to hold a Razor Fang at night specifically to evolve into Gliscor? Yeah, stuff like that for me just kind of it always comes across as really, really contrived. Or how Nosepass can only evolve into Probopass if it's leveled up on Mount Cornet. Yeah, I love the Listen, I love the Pokemon franchise, and this has not taken anything away from it. But there are some very weird quirks that happen in that game that don't really seem to have an explanation. The latter may be a convenient explanation for Sandy Rosechu, who was born without a subtype and evolved into a ground and bug type, presumably losing her electric type. He also retcons the evolution into Vamprosa to say that one merely gets a Rosechu to highest level happiness and then level up between midnight and 12:05 a.m. Chris clarifies that this scheme would only happen if Rosechus ever became integrated into the Pokemon series. They never will, but let's not break it to Chris for the umpteenth time, even in as many hours. Another evolution for Rosechu is the Incredible Lioness, better known as the PMS monster from Sonichu issue 8, that face-wrapped Jason Kendrick Howell seemingly analogues to Ultra Sonichu. Rather than gaining power from exposure to chaotic crystals, Rosechu simply gains tremendous strength through stress, closer to the Incredible Hulk than anything else. Because she's a woman, she can't control herself when she gets into a rage, and the only way to calm her down is to tell her that she's pretty, or whatever BS Chris means by make amends with deepest apologies. Heavy flattery and promising to do as she wishes. Manipulative bribery, that's what it's called. The process also completely destroys her clothing, and she has to have the foresight to know she's about to go into a blind, unstoppable rage and remove the clothing or just put on some makeshift clothing later to compensate. This serves no other purpose than as an excuse for Chris to draw Rosechu stripping, as the transformation consists of little more than her eyes turning red and her hair glowing, neither of which should destroy or otherwise damage her clothing. The fact that she even needs clothes is a bit of an odd point, since several of the Rosechus never wear more than shoes, so a lack of clothing hardly seems to be an issue for the species. Chris also clarifies that only the true and original Rosechu can transform, meaning if Bubbles Rosechu gets really mad at someone, she's just shit out of luck. Doesn't really seem that fair when you think about it like that. And for what they're worth, here are all of the list of Rosechus, at least the ones that we know of. Rosechu, Angelica, Bride, Britte, Bubbles, Chloe, Chrissy, Cristalla, Kitty, Lalisa, Mary, Mo, Samantha, Sandy, Savannah, Simona, Trisha, Sabina, and Zelina. That's about that, and to be honest, there's no real reason for me to go into detail with any of them, and therefore I won't. So, moving on. So, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, ugh. Yeah, that's about all I've got. So, I'll see all of you guys again for a slightly less ugh article. Thank you.